Guru Om Swasti. I wanted to say a few things and introduce you, His Holiness Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. When such an occasion as this occurs, it is a tradition to speak of the magnificent occasion in a five folds. And first, we speak about the magnificent place. Magnificent place here is Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder, Colorado is a magnificent place because it has been blessed by His Holiness Gawakamapa and also blessed by His Holiness Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche and also blessed by Vajrayana Rinpoche. It is fully blessed, therefore, it is a magnificent place. It is a magnificent time. It is magnificent time of the first time that we all have got together and have such a extended seminar of Nyingma for the first time in this country. And it is magnificent teacher such as His Holiness Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche to visit here from Tibet. And Rinpoche is well known, and not just well known, a fully accomplished master of Dzogchen lineage. Rinpoche also is a treasure revealer, and treasure revealers are fully true embodiment of a Padmasambhava. And we have the honor of Rinpoche's presence here. And it is a magnificent retinue, such as Venerable Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok and Venerable Jatu Rinpoche and Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche and all of us. And in this occasion, I have requested Rinpoche to turn the wheel of the Dharma on Dzogchen Ati Yoga, on the nature of mind, possibly if Rinpoche gives in a grant, pointing out instructions to all of us. So this occasion marks the time of our generation, marks the time of our life. So I would like to conclude here, and I would like to proceed with the mandala offerings and the requesting to turn the wheel of the Dharma, and Rinpoche will turn the wheel of the Dharma.
Oya, terang kerkafse ngecek sangma lanjut dan zombie ni kemdana kang langwar siawan ta sanji ki chu ajib samda de kirong kacham dordi zamsi jo.
On this auspicious occasion that we've all had a chance to gather here together, I shall give a brief introduction to the doctrine of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni.
Tani darjak tomba tamkila tiji chembo dan bandanya de nibi tondo kanza do mingombor yeni sanji zanna yang nangtla kara tangmit samji ngor shangchim shog de semche pari.
Our soul guide and Lord teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, from the point of view of definitive truth, was primordially realized as the primordial Buddha Kunduzangpo. But from the point of view of apparent phenomena, it took him 3 countless aeons of time to awaken the bodhicitta.
Deni Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Thar Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche Zapap Jigme Laftenu Ngombar Dzogchen Jibare.
After accumulating merit for 3 countless aeons of time, finally, in Bodh Gaya, India, after going through the 12 miraculous deeds as one of those deeds, he showed the miracle of his own realization, full Buddhahood.
Zapap Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche Dirkyanala Panberkyawa Chujin Kurlo Rambaksum Kurvaterit.
However, of the 12 deeds, the most important deed was his turning of the wheel of Dharma for the sake of taming the minds of sentient beings.
Deni Chujin Kurlo Rambaksum Kurvateya, Tangono, Katango Dimbavi Chujin Kurlo Ji, Takba, Tonmwadang, then Dravi Chus Sonde.
In that he turned the wheel of Dharma on 3 auspicious occasions. At the first turning of the wheel, the principal subject was that of the 4 Noble Truths, which was expounded for the sake of the common pursuit.
Denina Takba Chenbu Tonmong Mayin Bichu, Varva Sanyan Me Bichu Jin Korlo Tang, Dendu Tama Lakbar number Fievi Chujin Korlo Te, Chujin Korlo Rambaksum, Dirfia Yonjakla cornery. The Varvam Sanyan may be choosing Korlo.
Seni Mepa, Lasa, Deni, Sumpa,
Samba Lakbar number few choosing Korlo.
Tisana, Lakbar number Shepich, Navayewa.
Number Eva, Shiva.
Lasa. On the second turning of the wheel, the teachings of the Mahayana, the greater spiritual pursuit, were given on the uncommon levels. And this was concerning introducing the vehicle without characteristics, without implications. And the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was concerning opening the different doors of teachings.
Daily young Dirhya Shukti Kirva Namalano Hadang, Hladang, Novjenda, Mir Lasok Banams. Then, for
the sake of taming the minds of beings who are on the supreme level of sensibility, the Buddha introduced the secret mantra teachings into the God's realms, the Naga realm, the Dzogchen realm, and also the human realm. As for the vehicle of the lesser pursuit, the Hinayana teachings that were introduced, because they were maintained by the Buddha's principal disciples, such as Kungawa and so forth, they have gradually been passed on down the lines as they do exist intact in our world today. And concerning the teachings of the common vehicle, the pith or profound teachings were propagated primarily by Manjushri, and the extensive doctrines by Maitreya.
Deni tonmong mayin baksang dorji takbichunu riksum gombu hidang chapat takwarsa idagbu yonsu tarjan jiber hinri.
As for the uncommon vehicle of secret mantra, this is propagated by the 3 great protectors, and in particular, Vajrapani, Sangwe Dakpo.
Deni yan shuk gelasak bi jagran pakpa yertayang sanji ki tamba nyima karvartava yen rangu varta taru hibari.
And also because of the efforts of the 6 ornaments and the 8 supreme ones, the Buddhist doctrine spread in the land of India like the rising of the sun, the rays of the sun.
Deni jomdandi rangi ki long tamba vjanda, jomdandi tambandana fiang de tarwen geroji long tamba tang. Jayang na jomdandi rangit ka kong dini lub gyadna kong li lakbi ke pamam joni ji shawa ju. And
And then also, according to the prophecies of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni himself, predicting that the doctrine would spread from the north to the north, and not only that, at the time of his passing, his own prophecy that 8 years after he passed, one even greater than himself would be reborn with the name Padmasambhava. So it was, and he predicted that Padmasambhava would spread the teachings in the northern land of the snows.
Deni ngasham sorchi dorji gam urjin pammam joni ji shaba tena dia chanji jakam se sanji nawan thaida ru podalar ngombo shani zigda dorji dand nyami tebi wang xsam kyksam dak chiktu dibi dagni chandi.
So our guru, the lake-born Vajra Padmasambhava, in the Buddha field of Dzogchen, is Amitabha, the incarnation of Amitabha, who is in the Buddha field of Dzogchen, is the incarnation of Avalokiteshvara from the Buddha field of Riwopotala, and from the Pure Land of Dorje Den is the incarnation of Tekpe Wangpo, and is the condensed incarnation of these three. Excuse me, of these three, yes.
Deni kono saksam nan randadam tarwa sanji ki tambala fiya jachim bur fipa marung bi datan tamtun nam daru fipa la chuktu ngak bi chewe chembo jide.
And also, in that he is unrivaled as an incarnation, he is also unrivaled in his ability to tame the minds of unruly, barbaric-like sentient beings possessed by demonic forces who would come in the future. So he has this particular specialty.
Kongono tang woyirtana odutun tamtru marungwa tamchat tamaptagana deni sanji ki tamba taru shipin garchin mali ba tamchakya saru shibari.
So therefore, when he first came to the snow land of Tibet, initially he subjugated those demonic forces and negative harm doers, binding them to the oath of protecting the doctrine, and then after that he began to spread the doctrine of the Buddha very extensively.
Di jizana Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok zu mdu tamba deyana darjang jibir shibari. Khenchen mdu do.
And then after this, Khenchen Bodhisattva, Shantarakshita, came, and he was able to propagate Lord Buddha's teachings on the Sutra doctrine very extensively.
Deni jagar ki yeni jang panchuda chimbo mbamala matrada sanjik samala sabi panchuda gift subject jang woir tak dan trawari.
And then after that, from India, the great Pandit Vimala Mitra was invited, Sangye Sangwa and 108 great Pandits to come into Tibet.
Deni wochi yang na biro zanadang kawa karsak chugruhli jamsan la sabi lozawa gift subject jagar dan jagar tav zangana deni jagar ki chu jikso sak mali ba tamjata wot kis kat subject ki gerwari urkat gerwari
Also, Berotsana, Tani?
biro zana kawa karsak chugruhli jamsan
Chorong.
chugru.
And then the three well-known Tibetans, Berotsana, Kawa Pakset, Chorong, Louis Gelsen, they went to India to learn the Sanskrit language and to learn the Dharma in its entirety, and then they completely translated that into the Tibetan language.
Dedi ki vulla tanba tarwa zamna harjakan phakbi yirtana tar mamni martabari.
So therefore, even the Dharma was able to be propagated into Tibet in such a way that it hadn't even been propagated in India.
Deni jima dershik nangwan tayi sam jenda gevshir ninda treva George pandam kara zegiz dishonde George adka.
And then later, as the incarnation of the Buddha Nawatai Amitabha, the great Pandita Georgi Atisha came to Tibet to spread the doctrine.
Kongo ndrabi kachaz dalang nyonre tajuk shatran kongo kachaz glan dar tarfiadre.
So now I will say something about him.
Kongla na jagran phagbi yerta chirtar tari chu mali pada jayang urjin khandu landa novjan da traza la sabbi yergana khandu manam ji jang nam ki kan nigla mangutana sanji ki chu da ngir ki girderam jemla mishiba mednya barta chu manguzda kongo san nyonga sonre
Georgi
adiki Dzigar Kongtrul the chu yotsap poda. Yang Khenchung lang Khenchung man nam gana alagom ma nam ki kam kutana. Sang Dzigar tan bi chu yon zok tan mi shibak chikyang me nya bartawi kong tigila tirta tonri.
George Pandit Atisha, all of the Dharma that existed, concerning his qualities, all of the Dharma that existed in the great land of India, he fully realized, and not only that, he also met with the Dakinis from the land of Orkney, the space-goers, and received from them all of the profound teachings without exception. And so he was this kind of a precious incarnate being, possessing all of the teachings.
Then Congo no Sami Yaki to the Tiondi de Sami now would be Yaki, Jagger Preacher of Tiondi, Congo no Sang Nakalagam Namgana, Jachev Yaman, Jachak Yamashis, Sang Kajiti de Lam Tayot Manda, then he can shoot Buddha, Sanji Tamba Target, something Jagger Tarmamians Rixondi.
Lassa, it's Sami Nana, Pejata, Zikdu. Lassa. Get on, but you. And however, in that he was this kind of amazing incarnate with this amazing knowledge, even then when he visited Samye Monastery and he looked at the volumes on the secret mantra, although he thought that everything that was available to be learned had been made available to him in India, he realized that only 10% of it was what he had been able to learn, and that the secret mantra was 90% more vast than he himself had ever realized.
Tarta warrior na yopi kartanchu yorzo niga sangyami jirdi mankoni arjache sangyami jirdi ten taktan me persamji me chabare sonde
Orgenpa. And also another great Pandit, Drupchen Mahasiddha Orgenpa, who came to Gyagarne.
Wudna tansang kartanchu tamba samgya hodri. The Jirdi Myang Konala Dagmatsat Kasson. Nanchutar Yudi Jirdi Mang, when our com shoksaba, Parwochi, Karzan, Myang Chamadi Tokapkona, Yana Tarta, Wodka, Tanchunika Matsat Kasson. Nanchutar Jetta.
The page
Kartanchu Nigana Tata Pod Samja water. Sangna, Orginum Buji Tazo Tarji, Sang Girdi, Myang Kona the Tibetan, Tambasam Gimasat Kasson.
So, this great Mahasiddha Orgenpa, although there are some 300 volumes of the Kangyur and Tengyur of Lord Buddha's teachings and their commentaries, when he was translating just the titles of the secret mantra texts that existed in Tibet at that time, there were far more titles alone than there were even volumes of the other scriptures.
Tinana, Jisa, Tila sang Nagirazi, Te and Chokana, Origin Boche, Down, Kanlup, Last Bikidis, Jirvichu Tamjalan, Nagirazi, Nagar, Nyingma.
And so the original translations that occurred then, due to the kindness of Guru Organ Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, and so forth, and the Dakini, these are all part of what we call the Ngagyur Nyingma, or the earlier translation school, these original translations of the teachings.
Tila Jisana, Sarkya Badam, Karjat Padam, Denip Kardamba, Kardam Tila Saryan, Kardam Yangma, Georgi, Jima, Lobsan Takbari, Kardam Saryan.
Following the earlier translation school, at the significant point in history, there began the later translation schools of the Sakya, the Kargyu, and the Kadampa, within which context you have the Nyingma Kadampa lineage held by Georgi Atisha, and the Sarma, or later school Kadampa, which was headed up by Lobsang Trokpa Songkhapa. And thereby, when all of this came to pass, we then had what is now commonly referred to as the 8 great chariots of the teachings existing in Tibet.
Kona bat Sangmaya, Tikip Yondan some of Tana, Sangmaya, origin which you try to.
Now, if you really think about it, in terms of these great masters, they are all none other than actual incarnations of Guru Rinpoche.
Where's Gijana, Sarkia Vino, Sarkia Pantidi, Namtardam, origin which you long turn on, origin which you try in the song.
For instance, Sakya Pandit, in his own autobiography and also in the predictions of Guru Rinpoche, he is an incarnation of Guru Rinpoche.
The Nip Garkit Piwan, the Shinayan, Yamit Tahojimbu, Kong origin which you try in the Kong.
Gampapa?
Dakbo, Dog John, Garjitba.
Dakbo. And for instance, in Kargyu, the great Dakbo is also an incarnation, according to prophecy, of Guru Padmasambhava, Organ Rinpoche.
Then Gardam Biwan the Shina, Adukadam, Lobsan Tabak, Nicheriana, origin which you try in the Konabani, Nantan Saruchadonde.
And in the Kadampa tradition, both Atisha and Losang Trokpa, according to their own autobiographies, are incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Then Jonang Valab Samoptana, Jonang Turu Vada, Taranataji, Yonsu Tabi, Kipachimbo, Konaba Nikayana, origin which you try in the Konabani Songandre.
And in the Jonang, the Kargi Jonang tradition, the great Durura and Taranata, according to their own biographies, are also both incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Then Adiki Kadam Pachu Zegizone, Tinana, Wonder, Tango, Tanba Targanjono, Varter Giberfiano, Tama Yenang Vardo Niberkepi, standing here, Yoto Chotamja, origin which you try in the Adaka Congressman.
And also, Atisha himself said that, according to his tradition, Kadampa Palcha?
Gardampa Adha. Gardam Pachu, Vichu, Pachu, and another one. Pachu, Vichu.
Palchu Sena?
Apa, Ver. Pachu.
So, according to his oral tradition of ancestral tradition, he taught that in the beginning, those who propagated his teachings in Tibet, and in the interim as they spread ever so extensively, and even finally, those main lineage holders were all incarnations, would all be incarnations of Organ Rinpoche.
Dani Organ Rinpoche Rani Chijana, Kongla, Tapa Yopa Tetan, Sanjik Tambani Bergera, Konga Tapa Mix, so the Shepikans made him on it, they didn't on it, Sanjik Tamban Napkin, she's on.
Lasso. And even Organ Rinpoche himself taught that anyone who has faith in me and has some perseverance or diligence, then the doctrine of the Buddha from that point of faith will just continue to increase and spread forth.
Then Taton or Muniku some of Dana, where to Shonbi, dancing with some material.
So in terms of this kind of an explanation and understanding, all of the great upholders of the doctrine of Tibet are really all the same, have the same purpose.
Harastarna some of Tana, origin Bochida, Khenchen Bonda Sato Mahamudra, Kongtrul Rinpoche, courage on the 7 Shun.
But when you look at it, and you look at masters such as Organ Rinpoche, Khenchen Bodhisattva, and Bimala Mitra, it is hard to find anyone who can equal the enlightened activities that they set forth in Tibet.
Pansa Kongtrul Mamyoni Master, Skadjir Loza Vadeon, Konabi Kadina Shon and Resident, Danin Shon Marjizo.
And so, since it's hard to find any great scholars, pundits, realized beings such as they were, even later in terms of translators, it was very, very hard, difficult to find any who can equal them.
Deni Mamyon Serte on Jisa, Taloptak Maralogis Kidi Tabari, Titas or Mulu Chimbos exhibition yonder. I'm not Lord and Sheriff.
Northern Sheriff. Ngak.
Or no.
Marpa Lotsawa.
Maralogis, Kedang Kidi, Dimium.
Listen. At the time of the life of the great Marpa Lotsawa, Living simultaneously at the same time, there was one Ngak Norden Sherab.
Tipshon Nana, Titisana, Dedi finger girl, loads of Samina, Nanga Anton with the Conry.
Ngak Norden Sherab.
Lord Sherab.
Loden.
Lord Sherab.
Excuse me, his name was Ngak Loden Sherab. And at this time, he was the most famed of all translators, unrivaled.
Tani Congo work choose Fiambam Gombus on him, Dorde Janzek is what the work of the matter of Gerneri, Yakatanga, Yakatanga.
At that time, he was the one who translated the great Dode Gen Sutra into the Tibetan language.
Tani Congo Girvin Karnana, Dorde Janga, kept legacy then, Aranga, they get the clock down. Aranga Zina Samdikada, Machakba. Machakba,
the Dode Gen
Nana. Dode Jang.
Dundak?
What got the Yena Machakba?
Ready to Dundak? He translated that.
This is Yigis Tujaman.
Less. Dizena Yigitri. And so, in the Dode Gen, there's the passage where it says over and again, Ma Chakpa, which means be unattached. Right?
Tani Konga to Jerdide, Legacy, the Machakpa, they give me Jirkets and Malamari. Legacy.
And so in one of the passages in the original Sanskrit, it was saying aranga again and again, and he was able to just translate it into Tibetan again as machakpa, which means like unattached.
Tani Kongo just about the machakpa, Tonga Koa Mavidan, Kong Utixone, that chili chatagana, Chimshil Malaknari.
And then he reached some point of difficulty because he couldn't think of any other word other than the same word coming again and again.
Tani Kongo Mbirozani, Nangers Gazitis, Nanchut Kamburanga, the Honchemburanga, Mbirozani, getting Ingers Gazitis.
And then he examined some writing of Berotsana to make a reference for that.
Berotsani in a drag down to Drumondi, the drag down Ririla, Aranga Ririlan, Paradushemba. Jimba Satum Zopa Sondi something here. They did long division by Mount Jimba Tartivision. There's the cut to the Tixan you dripped about. The Tongi that you know, there's the subject of your own could go on the Zot quick to get the chance on.
And so, in looking at that writing of Berotsana to get some clarification, from the first part of the term, ara, he was able to decipher that this meant that this implied the 6 transcendental qualities: transcendental generosity, morality, patience, ceaseless effort, concentration, and knowledge, wisdom, to be applied. That these 6 transcendental qualities are transcendental throughout the 3 times.
He
was so astonished that he then composed some Dharma words based on this. The meaning of those words were that Berotsana is equal to limitless space. And that Kawapakset and Cho'olui Gyaltsen were like the sun and the moon. They were mentioned earlier. And that the other translators, all of the other translators, are likened to the fireflies that fly in the space. Something like this. It was putting them down.
Then,
so if you only look at his qualities in terms of being a translator, it is something quite sublime.
Then, Pantala Samloptana, Origin Buchidam, Bamala Majanikayana, Snarni Tartiva, Killer Jigme Pan, Origin Buchin, one of Trimbulana, Tartayam Jigo, Trimbunam la Chukin Korlo Korgon. Bamamajan, Tartayam Jila, Jan Guru Sirganana, Chukin Korlo Kol Jigodri.
And that the two great Pandits, Organ Rinpoche and Bimala Mitra, have been inseparable from then until now. Even though, in one sense, we know that Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, at present remains in the southwest continent of the cannibals, and that Bimala Mitra actually remains now on the 5-peak mountain of Wu Taishen, Gyanak Riwu Tsenga.
Then, original Buchedam, Bamamadrada, Kambum Bodha Sadhu Namki Jisan Jigme Tamchelan, or Nyingma Baji on the Tarnary.
Now it is Organ Rinpoche, Bimala Mitra, and Khenchen Bodhisattva, Shantarakshita, who are the three famed masters responsible for the establishment of the Nyingma doctrine in Tibet.
Nyingma we shoot them Dorkit Shedam. Dorkit Chatsang was in Yamsilin by Orchid, or Nyingma Koni Chachudi.
And in terms of the Dharma of the Nyingmapa, it is specifically meant to be the complete practice of Sutra and Tantra.
Oh, they? Yeah, Jen talks Dharma Balas, but Tamchel Lavana. Dorkit Chatsang was in Yamsilin Yamayu. Then Yama Koni Chachu, ain of some Gitwazika, Kitrikiri.
Now perhaps then in hearing that, it gives you some cause for doubt. You might think, does that mean then, I've said that perhaps it is that the later translation schools don't necessarily put an emphasis on learning all of the Sutra and Tantra, and that it is only the Nyingma school that does?
They are in the money. Tarta Wudna, Captain Poto, Samkia Wudneri. Samkia would Samayam, Ranganjir Kitis of Generema, Ranganjir Kitis of Markira, Shinjir Kiloza, Tamjaka, Girnazaga, along Chikia Yodamari.
No, not really, because actually those 300 volumes that exist now in the Kongir, which are practiced by all schools, they existed at the time of the earlier translation. There's not a single volume that came later. They all came from the time of the earlier translation.
Deni, Jan Tamchekin Jana, Chumangu on the Chaperta, Riata Tajan. Dorkit Shedam, Chaperta Narkit Yoga, some Yamsil Tila, Yama Bazete.
Now, that should suffice for the the external sort of understanding of the Sutra and Tantra approach. But specifically, there is a strong focus placed on the 3 inner Tantras.
Tina, Kenaba, Nichutok, Yama Vichutori. Ah, Tai, not teach that Jagans and Tabgoni, Jimam, Dorkit Shedam, Narkit Yoga, some Yamsilimba. Tin Nani just Zopachim Yamsilimba, Yamavi, Sanyitzina, Yamavi Munzanto, the most Tangzangoni.
I asked if this is a Nyingma Dharma Center. The answer is yes. Therefore, it's important that all of you bear in mind that from the external point of view, your approach should be the ascertainment of the sutras and tantras in general, that internally the 3 yogas, and that specifically the pinnacle of the path should be focused on, which is the Dzogpa Chenpo, the great perfection.
Then young Makoni Chachuma, Jala made it Gondi. Don't tell, Dorjit Sanglam, Dorjit Kat Sangla, Manurva. Then young Lansil and young Makoni Chunman, Jala Kat Sangla and Yamsil and Jimmy.
And that it is the Nyingma approach, and specific to the Nyingma, that the Sutra and Tantra are unmistakably sort of studied and understood in an unmistaken and complete sense. And this is a specific approach of the Nyingma, which is unrivaled by any other.
Dani Rijan Sarkia Karjid Las of Shutter Gentamchella, lamit ki jirde de la pargit margit sere nyam se lengi ma tomana ma ana adu segi der tabi narji yoga samsegi savani yodmar.
Also, now in terms of the later translation schools of Sakya, Kargyu, and so forth, what is understood as the inner tantras is referred to as the unsurpassed, Anuttara Yoga Tantra, in context of which there is the father and mother Yoga Tantra. But there is no mention at all, the understanding of Maha, Anu, and Ati Yoga is non-existent.
Deni tek samga nangni kya, ta rang nyuk nyirt sanji komod berjepa, Ati Yoga kuna te nyam sile no, ta nyama bari.
And of these three, for those who want the swiftest approach to realization, then this is none other than the practice of the Ati Yoga, Great Perfection School, and this is specific to only the Nyingmapa.
Deni nyangma vi zokpa chembu chuser te yana, tangu targan jogna to voyer to thomar origin boche dang bamanika kona litaro chenre.
As for how the Dzogchen doctrine was originally propagated in the land of Tibet, it was only due to the kindness of Organ Rinpoche and Bimala Mitra.
Deni varta no kimchi longshen ram jamdang rongso mahapandra konigi ti tambata takshang jiber hinre.
After, it was also due to the kindness of the omniscient Longchenpa and the great Rongzom Lotsawa.
Deni jisuna kimchi mpham jamsoda jang chense hong kong na bani jina tambata na lariana takshang tarhinre.
Who again were able to uplift the doctrine, and after them, with the coming of the great Mipam Rinpoche and Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, the same thing occurred, the uplifting and the spreading forth of the Dzogchen doctrine. Therefore, the propagation of the Dzogchen Dharma does fall into these three time spans of previous, interim, and present.
Ngadar kiti so origin pochi zokba chembo telana or dzogchen xarma gam khter mi shig yon se tagnere.
And then also before, at the time of Organ Rinpoche, the Dzogchen also was introduced in the two categories of the direct utterance lineage and then the terma.
Dendum bama meti chutelana yachira Tintu kama, Nyingma zi yon zitande. Nyantik te laksar yang niga zegir, Nyingma zegir, bama meti nyantik te la zend. Gyachi va zend, bama meti. Gyachi va dang, kama. Kama zend.
So, and Bimala Mitra introduced what is called the Gyachewa. Is there another name? The Gyachewa and the Kama lineages of Nyingma. The great extensive and the Kama lineages.
Tani vartana kimchi longshen ramjam gana ramshan xarbi chat gechaptana wa fyadari.
And this became known as the Bima Ningtik. Then later at the time of Longchenpa, so Longchenpa was responsible for primarily revealing the aspect of sheer lucency.
So
independence upon the extremely profound 13 tantras as the principal focus, Longchenpa was responsible for revealing this aspect of the display of the radiant sheer lucency. Responsible for introducing the aspect that focuses more on the nature of emptiness. And his elaborations on this the specialty of the measure of emptiness was based on his studies of there are 23 volumes that have to do with the nature of the mind, and another 3 volumes. Longkarna Traksum.
Tani jima jang chesi gong no zapi man kaden jisen zemi cheta sonere.
And later, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo based his elaborations of the Dzogchen on what is called the Zedbe Mengak. These are the fifth essential pointing out instructions.
Khenchen mafam jamsu no arjilla lokper tobi gurangam bat sarchat pifyardana lor kutuba jechimbuyi jechir fyadneri.
And the omniscient Mipam, in order to annihilate all the incorrect understanding and reversed understanding of the doctrine, made his elaborations based on what is called transmission and scriptural authority.
Dinana Tanyamavi Zoba Chembushi Gonana, Tokun Chembu, Trikajism Rangana, they get Chetana of Gondi.
And so for those of us who are studying the doctrine of the Nyingma Dzogchen tradition must also have some understanding of the works of these six great masters and where they focused.
Tani Zobachimbo Rang Yamsilin Balangana, Tar Getang, Manak, Long Shots of Mango, you pick up your order. Gil long Manak, or Get Kushartan, Long Kushartan, Mangak Kushartan.
And in order to practice the great perfection, there are ways of giving those teachings according to the Tantras, according to the fifth essential pointing out instructions, and according to scriptural transmissions. Today, I will not teach in an extensive way at all in terms of explaining by way of the Tantras or the scriptural transmissions. Because all of you are practitioners who have been receiving the teachings to this point and have been doing the practice and are already on a higher level of understanding, and so I will give you the teachings from the point of view of fifth essential pointing out instructions.
Mangatila Sharpan and Bagniak, Juk Adakazon, Lam Chachut Kipiang, give the Transatangil Chigaka, Juk Adak, Lam Chachut, give the Transatangil.
The explanation, according to pointing out instructions, will be in terms of the base or the ground, which is that of original purity, the path, which is that of firmly cutting through, Trekchit, and then after which dissolving into atomic particles.
Deni Rjul 100%. Lam Torger Givkang. Give a worker to Elector New York.
The ground is that of spontaneous presence, the path is the practice of Togel, the result is the light body.
The
first of these is for those who are lazy and who want to be liberated without effort. And the final two are for those who have some perseverance and who are able to be diligent. Now, first of all, let's begin with how one applies the view, meditation, and conduct to apparent phenomena. First of all, the view. Primarily, one must reach a definitive conclusion about the fact that all of the magical display of apparent phenomena, as we see it, is none other than the display of one's own mind. And that the mind is free from birth, free from abidance, and free from point of passage, so that its nature is none other than that of emptiness. And this is how the view concerning the nature of the mind must be ascertained. Now, in order to really be able to recognize or ascertain this view, one must receive teachings on and practice quiescence meditation and penetrative insight meditation. By practicing quiescence meditation or shamatha practice, then through efforts in meditation, one is able to understand the view. And this is in accordance with the way that the Kargyu lineage gives the teachings. Now, the principal focus of the Kargyu lineage to ascertain the view of Mahamudra is to practice abidance, movement, and intrinsic awareness, these three aspects, to discover the nature of the mind. And so this is the principal yoga focus, which leads one to the view of the Mahamudra. And not only that, in order to really practice the Kargyu doctrine, one must know the path of method, the 6 yogas of Naropa, and the path of liberation, which is the view of the Mahamudra, and the other kinds of pointing out instructions and mountain retreat instructions that are given by such great masters as Karma Chakme Rinpoche and so forth. Now, secondly, the teaching for achieving penetrative insight or vipassana. Within the view or upon the view, experiencing the meditation. Now, according to the Nyingma tradition, one searches to discover the origin, then the place of abiding, and the place of passing of the mind. And when one comes to recognize the true nature of the mind based on this type of investigation, then they reach the meditation. Then they are able to begin the meditation. These days, most Nyingma teachers begin introducing the disciples from this point of view, which is the point of view of penetrative insight or vipassana. And also these days, some of the practitioners will mingle the two points from Nyingma and Kargyu, and like a river, will sort of practice them together in a mingled way. Now, the main point to encounter is the empty nature of one's mind. That's the point. From the point of view of Sutra, this is called realizing the Great Mother, the source of all Buddhas, the Prajnaparamitra. And in other terms, these are referred to as the 3 great views. The view of the middle way, the view of the Mahamudra, the view of the Dzogpa Chenpo, the great perfection, which is to realize the unborn nature of mind. And so, in explaining some of the modes of the great Nyingma scholars, at this time I would like to mention something about the great Karmapa Rangzhung Dorje.
Karmapa Rangzhung Dorje molm genana. Tatam chatam tar sonagana gomachi boyan zirab zigot. Tatam tarvandana gomachi.
The great Karmapa said in one of his prayers that the view of the Madhyamika, or the middle way, is to be free from any limitation of mind.
Oh, zirtang tam chitam travi chagani firgachin boyan zira. Yushub tarvandana firgachi. Zirtang kan me pichaga.
Zindang.
Zunba kan me.
And that it is the view of the Mahamudra to be free from any type of grasping to any apparent phenomena.
Ndana kindi Dzogchen jiyang fiar ziwanje takba rinpar gi chusar kanan tatak yongsen dina gana Dzogchen yang zirab zinde.
Dini kunja.
Ndana kindi Dzogchen jiyang fiar zinde.
Together.
Dari kita Dzogchen yang zirab zinde. Goma zirab, Shekchen zirab, Dzogchen zirab.
And that these together, brought together, are the pinnacle of all 9 vehicles, which is the practice of Dzogchen. Dzogchen, the great perfection, being the very pith point of the view of the middle way and the Mahamudra.
Tapter semji chunyes tokbar shok zinde. Ta Shekchen Dzogchen goma chakeda. Rang semdi chimo zgenna. Tashi kiboto tezen rit zinde tar tokbar kirchik zikonga molam tabnere.
And so what he's saying in his prayer and his aspiration is that one must come to know the fundamental nature of the mind, the dharmata, as it is, and that in turn is to know the essence of these 3 great chempos, these 3 great views.
Teni tela tabari, gumbani tingang dono, na tokkan zinbag jen kang mfjeda mfjeda, tingang mfjeda ndjo tela no gumba zinde.
That's the view. Now the meditation is to remain with the view without introducing any type of discursive thought whatsoever or any grasping of any kind, to just simply remain with the nature of the view.
Teni teacher tena, tar nyami tsort kum kiba da trba mangu yang tambe fiyo netan, song nim kitub karma chmit ko song tzrzuchat.
Now at this time, although there are many great elaborations on this point by the great Nyingma and Kargyu scholars, I would like to mention the words of the great well-known Karma Chakme Rinpoche. Turn inside and observe, apprehend one's own mind. This is what Karma Chakme said. When you observe the nature of your own mind, that which is the essential nature, being the nature of emptiness, is the view. And encountering that empty nature and simply remaining in it in comfort and ease is the meditation. And that the Dharma, the essence of the Mahamudra, is that the nature of all meanings, be it samsara or nirvana, is contained in that, precisely in that point, is brought together in that point of simply remaining in the view. That is the meditation. Now the conduct is concerning whatever discursive thought arises, to allow it to express its own dynamic energy and recognize its nature simultaneously. Now, of all of the great pointing out instructions in the Nyingma school of the expressing the tantras, I would like to mention the pith point from Karma Chakme Rinpoche's mountain retreat instructions. Whatever apparent phenomena occurs, whatever is experienced, if it is pleasing, if it is wondrous, observe it and there is a key point here for using that as one's experience for practice.
Teni stin ngamba natsa khichat yang ga mapa ngamba timo thondi telar tudan wungdon chimbu chitena yor sonji.
And similarly, on the other hand, whenever there's non-conducive circumstance and things are not in harmony, there's illness, there's disease, observing that phenomena and that experience also presents a key point for enhancing one's practice.
Teni ndorna tijenda zana nyana sona dadna ndorna nyamning ngang mabje payara star jangjo telan shopazendi.
In brief, whether eating, sleeping, going, or staying, by observing the dynamic display of that energy, of that activity, and maintaining that as one's practice is conduct. Now, in terms of the result, it's time to mention a few words from the great Jetsun Milarepa. Milarepa said that inside I am suffering from the sickness of the great perfection, and externally I'm suffering from the sickness of the Mahamudra. And in that I am sick, from this sickness I could even die. What was he saying? He was saying that the unborn nature of mind is the great perfection, and remaining in that unborn nature without motion, unmovingly, in terms of the meditation, never wavering from the view, is the Mahamudra, and that both of these, being experienced and being put into the application of whatever discursive thought arises, is the way by which the death occurs of the discursive thought, or in other terms, the achievement of the status of full awakening, or Buddhahood. That is an explanation of the view, meditation, and conduct according to Trekchit, cutting through. Now, in order to really put this into practical application, I shall review to you the key points of the Nyingma focus. According to the scriptural authority that I've drawn from in giving this explanation, it is in accordance with the Kargyu doctrine. And this is why, because according to the amount of time I've been given here, it's auspicious to bring these two together. Because this is because I have come from the Kargyu Center into the Nyingma Center, so this indicates the non-duality, or the joining into the union of the two. So it's auspicious. And also because it seems that all of you have been studying and training in the Kargyu doctrine for some time, and are now taking a keen interest in the uncommon doctrine of the Nyingmapa. And so due to the power of that, I have made this explanation in accordance with its need. And also generally, it is true that there is a very strong connection between the Kargyu and Nyingma in general.
Tani Nerfia Pajanda, Taho Dawjona, Origin Buji train, but Korkajar Juji.
And also that it was taught by Guru Rinpoche himself. He predicted that his incarnation was Dakpo Dawe Shonu.
Tani Karma Pakya, Karma Kamtaniba Tism came to Terrari. Kong Janaka Gola Shombi Tatoyang, Naringa Origin Pamam, Joringa Tipsin Sarazi, Korkayang Korgin Buji trains, Jarji.
And then Karma Pakshi, the second Karmapa, who was an incarnation of Karmapa Dusum Khenpa. When he went to China, he was always proclaiming himself as the incarnation of the Mahasiddha Saraha, who was also an incarnation of Guru Rinpoche.
Then Karma Kamdasamba, Karma Tisum Kimbari. Tisum Kimbaya, Tansan Yami, Yanti Yavi Chunyam Gona, Karma Tisum Kim, some corner left in Goni. Konkum Honchilam of Lamari.
And the third Karmapa, Dusum Khenpa, if one wants to, for instance, perform all of the meditations found in the Ningtik Yabshi, the famed Yabshi, then they must also rely upon his words and teachings because he was the Lama of the omniscient Longchenpa.
Then you could Karma Chamite you want Shina. Kongo Lamaya, Tarta, Nisaka Sama, Payvari, Payvi, Anamsh Major Dorjis exone, Kongo Lama Tiri, Kongo Hopma of some of Tanaya. Pay Tambans and Barisa comes out here of the exone. The Karma Chemical Hope Mari, Karma Chemical only. Ta Karjit Pa Halamin Gon and Yama Karjit Pari. Tina, Tita, Dirachimbo's one. There are Nikarian and Gazon, Shed Gorchik James and Tain.
And also the great Mahasiddha scholar Karma Chakme Rinpoche, who is very responsible as a founding father of the Peiyu tradition, which is my own tradition. He was the guru of the great Terten Migyur Dorje, who was his disciple, and also his disciple was, in fact, the founder of the Peiyu tradition, Rigzin Kunzang Sherab. And so, because Chakme Rinpoche was the guru of both of these latter two, it again indicates the strong connection between the Kargyu and Nyingma, which also indicates to you why I chose to bring out this connection here today.
Teni Kena Binyamnia, Hachir Tate Samsila, your Kiresam, Karsan, Mitsojina, Jetchu, Mokodan, Tachikin Yamling Ngoma, Darka Chakosaya, some Tate Samska to Kiresam.
Now I'm thinking that this should be suitable enough for you to be able to put into practice. And then if I speak too many words or give an extensive explanation, it might not be necessary or pertinent for all of you at this time. And I felt that this kind of briefer, concise explanation would be something that would be practical for your practice.
That's in the language at some man, Tadionji Montansia. Gatits in the Mutaki the Shina, Shimata beyond the Nibertum Tradan, the Chu Yashir, Chanyi Shekina, Timdri Dadana, Chutim Jigme in the Terran Georgian.
So now secondly, in terms of the spontaneous presence, the Togel practice, then I have every aspiration and prayer that all of these practices will be able to be implemented and fully realized in this lifetime. And if by chance that doesn't happen, I also offer a prayer that you all be able to have that realization as you pass from this life. And at this point, I will end my teaching.
Zum Bitter la Phuntsok hapa som ki yundun zo Bagin pande am joni Rinpoche den chukhadan blamr sorwan deu Loka chula sho pablami ten chular gawar ki pablami ten chuzum haur tsam de blami ten den chukhadan blamr sorwan deu Sing Sarji, Pilam Ki, and the Sato Mayan, here of Sonduman, Lamar Muku, Conner Tachuni, and Dencho, Lamar Sorwa and Devon. Chula Johnson, the Samachi, Jan, Todan of Lamar, Tapirtim Jerky, Bombalata, Amian Picheva, you the Dencho, Lamar Sorwa and Devon. Dixin Hamba, Matson Sancho, so Tapas the Shirma Kirva, Mukulamji, Trovita Tom, Dencho, Lamar Sorwa and Devon. 关注上座的这个行当，别的跟家乡的跟家乡一样的，拉米尔南就是可能热里边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。木兰吉扎瓦马祖那才刚的这么上面就等表，前面他们马里马不边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。一生拉米先了马就南多个人你跟拉去那样，多年的多把破一门都边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。拉玛拉日可达个马丘那面把东西长毛里那样，就跟我这前头的摩托边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。大比州当烟的马路那前面的牛面你路我出江，年多在个上面么一边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。拉玛上街你的马黑那上去的天上给不就西江，这是个多米而且三么子边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。年比赛就切给谁说呢？讲拉米挂着呢，马着呢，南到他去南的门着，边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。今们的头满比赛路呀，大边看都说这马黑那，交通也是先看门的，边人就活的，拉米尔说完的。大里让给让你的马里那上街门的拉米头几人，前街的啥等街的这里往天弄天弄，真情拉满天。啥子么了么那里切切这样样接了个比问啊啦，接都接上这啥人们边天弄天弄，有人弄人天。把这样这边娘东这多半托样去了讲话穷，点着三年看着你的别人中秋你这为了马真，但这么什么让都那些话你这让你的慢慢的人都那这路线，点着三年多你人这别走比上你这为了马真。你这么小众，我拉木巴穷，我拉就你的热苦巴路，沿着山你什么都多见，真的把马卡罗这为了马真。拉上集中，前边去个，写的前把集中，皮皮不露面，沿着山你可说南西，我那根本的话这为了马真。qua ma khi chẳng tiền chỉ chút cơ mi tiền chịu mai qua mi chỉ ba mi tiền đạp sam ni qua tới cơn gió biển đồn gió giang đã bị la ma chân rằng đêm sâu gió giang chỉ chịu la một đời giang lưu chìm chưa chỉ bị chút cơ tiền đạp sam ni tam ba yong chỉ nhìn giảm như mà đã bị la ma chân nhân trở chế yang giờ là nhắm tô miệt đời tô pan thôi yang giật bị trở giờ chung tiền đạp sam ni khám sông hoàng du bị không gir ra bị làm mà chân chú bảo rằng yang dịch tin khir ya chung dịch tin khir ya chú chỉ nhắm lên tra tiền đạp sam ni lúc nhị cần du bị thế không sang bộ đã bị làm mà chân Shin lo tam sen yo chang me chang ron lo de bar karwa to ron ba to ron de mi se bia angom bo chela ta de lam ne kan la ko rion yo pa mit chin ha la mi shin lo ni te sam ka anyam le li jin so an de pan de ro la ngo jin so ro an de sham ta ni je che ver shin ye lo na jab jon nu de ni te hi nyam ni na sal jon shi jin so an de ko wi do mer sam jin so an de jo king in jon che ver shin ye lo ke pi har go mo li pi nga dang kan la mer mu ku son de ba ko na re so don zer ji na ngar chi te na kan na re che ver shin ye lo当你还有的钱那米土木过的木过为土建立，你人宽路找当然觉得的多年子做不了新业了。这个点比过为多么过做为长为过比啥么就做去主当花浪么个百年前的光当的不了新业了。当你们觉得一些人难解，在我选的这头公面难得人，他们没儿闹俺们些老别了人同的心也了。多难得你这边唱话人，我不切记的人集中你，在当秋了把钱梦中，为了对的没人这不心也了。